afternoon. Please be seated. The first matter we have on for this afternoon's list is State of New Hampshire versus Soket Sen. Is that how I say that? Suchit-san. Okay. As a preliminary matter, I'm going to swear in the interpreter. Sir, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Cambodian, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. You swear, sir, that you will translate faithfully and truly from English to Cambodian and Cambodian to English in this proceeding?
I do.
Okay. Please state your full name for the record, Mr.
My name is Martin Law Chan, working for Words Language Services in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. You may be seated, and everybody can remain seated throughout the course of this proceeding. Sir, we're here because the grand jury indicted you with a crime of attempted indecent exposure and lewdness.
Yes, sir.
Attorney Schiffelbein, have you had a chance to review the indictment through the interpreter with your client?
I have, Your Honor, requested interpreter immaculate.
Which I will do. What's the state's request for bail?
We have an agreement. State is looking for personal reconnaissance bail at this time. Don't believe any cash bail is required. Mr. Sean has no prior criminal record, and given the delay here and of course the nature of it, I don't believe a cash bail is required at this point.
Can you tell me a little bit about the case?
This came to light because the victim, I believe it's AB in the case, indicated to the mother.
Make sure you speak slowly.
Indicated that Mr. Sean had attempted to kiss her at some point. The mother, frankly, did not believe AB, and so took AB's messaging account and contacted the defendant, pretending to be the 13-year-old girl, AB. During that discussion, there were some discussions of how much they love each other, and then the mother, pretending to be AB, requests the photos that are eventually sent. Mr. Sean sends pictures of his genitalia to the account. Flyer evidence would show that he and the victim, AB, had talked on that account before as her account. The mother would say that she never used that account to talk to Mr. Sean.
What account do you mean?
It's an instant messaging account.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's Facebook, but I'm not 100% sure. So, and so he sent that to that account. He sent those pictures to that account. That's why it's an attempt, Your Honor. The pictures never reached the 13-year-old girl. He talked to the police, admitted that he had, in fact, sent the pictures. I should mention, before the police contacted him, his mother, AB's mother, accosted him at work because they worked together, and he claimed at that point that he knew it was the mother, and that's the reason he did it. So when he was interviewed by the police, he stated that story. He admitted that he did send those pictures. The pictures are of him, but that he knew it was the mother and not the 13-year-old girl, so that is his defense. So, given that, Your Honor, and that this has happened a while ago, there's been no incidents between the families, and then we don't believe cash bail is necessary, and ask the court to adopt the 10,000 post reconnaissance, no contact with AB or her immediate family. And Your Honor, I'd like to mention, Attorney Schiffelbein has the official agreement form. So
I have it, actually.
You have it, Good, thank you. Executed waiver of extradition, no firearm, destructive device, ammunition, no excessive use of alcohol, and then lastly, Amy's mother and Mr. Sean do work together, so I have a lot of contact to that extent, but there should be no discussion of the case between the two of them. To the extent the term stays.
All right, thank you. Attorney Schiffelbein, were you able to review this, these bail conditions with your client? Okay, thank you. All right, I'll approve the bail. I just wanted to hear a little bit about the case when there's no facts. I kind of just want to know a little bit more about what's going on. If I had an affidavit or something, I probably wouldn't have required the hearing, but I'm sure you both understand.
I do have a question for the court, just because I'm curious. Mr. Sean will fill out the financial affidavit, but I don't know if that calculation takes into account that he would need significant interpreting services were he to hire his own attorney. For instance, somebody, I can imagine, might otherwise not qualify for a public defender,
I'd have to pay for an interpreter.
but then would be unable to pay for an attorney if that person also had to pay for the interpreter, right?
Unless he hired an attorney that in New Hampshire that speaks Cambodian.
So I just didn't know if that was accounted for in the courts.
Do you think there would be an issue with qualifying?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have a job, I need to attorney here.
I'll make sure it's not an issue. I think expenses, he has no idea what it would cost, but if it's, I'll take a look at his affidavit and I'll take it into account. Assuming you're appointed to represent, why don't you talk to Mr. Chen to get a cost estimate so that I can just approve your interpreter services motion to help prepare the defense and all that kind of stuff.
Like, does the court have any issue with me using this interpreter?
No, not at all, not at all. I think we only need a separate one if we're ever gonna have a trial.
And the court would be able to find one on its own.
Unless you're comfortable using Mr. Chen for, if we don't have a trial, and we have some other proceeding.
I think I did.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't want to take the court's only Cambodian interpreter.
No, I think he's from Manchester, or there are many in Manchester. Not many, but a few that we could tap if we needed to. Okay?
Thank you, Ryan.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. This matter is submitted.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, sir. Mr. Chen, can I actually have, I have an email. Can I have your business card so I can put it in the file? I have an email from what appears to be your boss, but.
Don, I don't have a pad with me, but this is my email from the equipment company I work for.
Let me see here.
I can write
Oh,
them.
you have it?
Well, that works, the email.
Yes.
I sent the email with the notice.
I know I just read it. I just didn't see it.
I can write my name on it, that's it. My email, the company that I work for. Works in Manchester.
Okay, why don't you do that? You can write your name on that. I appreciate it. Do you live in Manchester too?
Actually, I live in Massachusetts.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. Okay. Okay, all right. Are we too optimistic in thinking that Sullivan County will be ready a little early?
I was gonna at least get it going and see.
Okay. I know, I know. Yeah, they're going to be able to just put it on the screen, so I can, the screen. We're actually just waiting for the prosecutor.
Sorry about that. He's coming right to the door now.
It's all right, I know we're a little early.
Oh, I apologize, Your Honor.
No problem, counsel, I know we're a little early. I was being optimistic by calling you early. This is an arraignment in the matter of State of New Hampshire versus James Kraft. Kraft is spelled C-R-A-F-T. Before we begin, I'm going to ask everybody to please identify themselves for the court monitor, beginning with the state.
Attorney Jeffrey Gallagher from the Sullivan County Attorney's Office. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Attorney Gallagher. And Mr. Kraft, you don't have an attorney, correct?
I do not.
Okay, I understand the public defenders had a conflict of interest in representing you here today, so I'm going to explain to you why we're here. You can actually have a seat if you'd like, okay, Mr. Kraft?
All right.
We're here because the county attorney's office has filed 2 complaints against you. One alleges that you committed the crime of sale of a controlled drug, heroin, and the second alleges that you committed a conspiracy to do the same. Distribution of a controlled drug, or sale of a controlled drug. Both of those, as I read the indictments, are Class B felonies, which means they're punishable by up to 3.5 to 7 years at the state prison in terms of incarceration, sir. Now, you've applied for court-appointed counsel. A lawyer is going to be appointed to represent you. I don't know anything about your case other than the charge. That's all the information I have right now. So, based on the fact that you're unrepresented, I'm going to enter a plea of not guilty on your behalf. And I'm going to appoint another attorney to represent you as soon as possible, okay?
All right.
Just want to let you know this proceeding is an arraignment, so this is that's the fancy French law word for your first time in court. So I've entered that plea on your behalf. Anything you say in this proceeding is recorded, could be used against you, so that's why I'm doing most of the talking and you're not. Because you have a right to a lawyer, and you should really talk to a lawyer before you say anything. Given the severity of the charges. Now, the next issue is that the law requires me to do is address bail pending the trial. Now, the state has submitted a request that bail be set at $25,000 personal recognizance, which means you don't have to pay any money, you just have to sign a promise to appear in court, and if you violate that promise, I could impose a $25,000 forfeiture against you. That's what that means. A bond is a fancy word for promise. So they're not looking to detain you, but they are looking to impose some conditions on you pending your trial. And if you have a problem with any of these conditions, I would suggest when you get your attorney that you talk to them about amending any of these conditions. You have the right to talk about them right now if you want to, but that's entirely up to you. You do so at your own risk. Now, the conditions that the state is suggesting is that you live at an address that you provide to me, provide to the court, which will be on the application for counsel form. That you not travel outside of New Hampshire or Vermont, so there's a travel restriction. That you execute a waiver of extradition approved by the court, but I don't require that as a condition until about a month after you've met with your lawyer. Because I don't require you to waive anything without a lawyer going over with you. Okay, so that requirement would be not effective until 30 days after you receive your appointed lawyer. The other condition is that you cannot possess a firearm, destructive device, dangerous weapon, or ammunition while this case is pending. That you cannot use any alcohol or drugs as defined by New Hampshire law while this case is pending. And that you submit to any necessary testing as required by pretrial services. Now, pretrial services is a pretrial probation program that the state is recommending. And you'll get a copy of the requirements of the Sullivan County Pretrial Services Program, which is located on the 103 County Farm Road in Unity. So that you'd have to report there and review the conditions of a pretrial release with them after court. That includes periodic urinalysis testing, it includes reporting to them as a directed report, reporting any police contacts. It's basically a pretrial probation officer. There's a provision here, but it doesn't appear checked off on the pretrial services form for electronic monitoring. That's not intended, is it?
Correct, Your Honor. I went over the bail order with Mr. Kraft prior to today's hearing, introduced myself as the Assistant County Attorney from the County Attorney's Office. It's my understanding this is consistent with the bail order that is previously existing in this case. And it's my understanding, at least at the time that you represent me, you did not have a problem with it. But obviously, that's changed from then till now. But Your Honor is correct. There is no request for electronic monitoring.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. I didn't know there was a pre-existing bail order. So Mr. Kraft, you probably knew everything I just told you, but I just wanted to make sure you were aware of it. Now, Mr. Kraft, do you wish to respond to any of the conditions on bail at this time, or are you okay until you get your lawyer appointed?
I'm already getting my attorney appointed.
Okay. All right. So those conditions are imposed. We'll get you a lawyer appointed as soon as possible. Make sure your mailing address is accurate on the application for court-appointed counsel, okay? Because that's how you'll receive notice of your lawyers through the mail. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. State, anything further?
I guess just as the waiver of extradition, so has Your Honor modified the proposed bail order to include that additional language regarding the 30 days from appointment?
Yes, I have. And that's kind of a quirk of mine. I don't like to have defendants who have appointed lawyers waiving anything without someone explaining to them whether they should or should not do that. So I put on the form that he shall execute a waiver of extradition approved by the court within 30 days.
All right, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay? All right, Attorney Gallagher, thank you for reviewing the bail form with Mr. Kraft before the beginning of the hearing. Okay, Mr. Kraft, you're excused. Unless, does he have to sign a new bail PR bond? I don't have a copy of it.
I did have to file that, I am gonna have them wait for your signed, bail order though.
Okay.
He has to.
Okay.
I believe
You do that.
the pretrial services, there's a signature on the pretrial services just for him to sign. So, all right.
Okay, we'll endorse that and we'll get it back over to the clerk's office. So, Mr. Kraft, you might have a couple pieces of paper to sign before you leave, okay?
All right.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Am I calling jail, or do you guys wanna call the jail?
I can call the jail.
I think we called the jail for Sarah Harvey.
Yep, that will be the next case.
Is her attorney at the jail or at the courthouse?
I think they're at the jail as far as I know.
Okay, do you know who the attorney is?
Attorney Cohen. Attorney Cohen's prior counsel.
All right, thank you.
Know that there's a charge of anything related to that, I know there is a knockdown for suspension. I think, I'm not 100%
So if I just amend failure due to good conduct and bail laws and be arrest free, and then on February 16th, Bergen was arrested for operating a motor vehicle in Swansea while his license was suspended. How's that? Acceptable to everybody?
that works. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Burnham, you'll be pleading true to the two sets of probation violations from February and then in March. And it looks like your sentences on all of them are going to be concurrent, 6 months at the House of Corrections, stand committed with pretrial confinement credit on both of these for 28 days. You're ordered to be on good behavior, comply with terms of the sentence, and the defendant is to undergo substance abuse treatment as directed by your probation officer. probation stayed from 2nd of April until you were released from confinement. All other orders remain in full force and effect. So when you get out, you're back on probation. You understand that? You have to comply with the substance abuse treatment program that your probation tells you to, right?
Yes.
Okay, I have this acknowledgement waiver of rights for the probation violations pending. Looks like you just signed it here today. Any questions about this form, sir?
No.
Mr. Vernon, is this your signature right there?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Did you have any problem reading or understanding any of the rights on this form?
No.
You understand you don't have to plead true. You can have a hearing if you want, but by pleading true to these violations, you're waiving all these rights, right?
Yes.
So you're waiving your right to a hearing in front of me, right?
Correct.
Waiving your right to have your attorney defend you, cross-examine any witnesses that might be called, and waiving your right to have any order in court evidence and witnesses that might be favorable to you, right? You're also waiving your right not to be found in violation of rules unless the state convinces me it's more likely than not that you violated them. You understand that?
Yes.
You understand what the state would have to do in order to prove that you violated all the different rules and the 2 violations of probations that are pending?
Yes.
A few of them. Rule 7, Rule 10, 1, 2, 10, and 12C. Most of which involve drug use and failure to comply with legal health court. You understand that?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions at all about that?
No.
Hmm?
One of their, I think maybe the fire order put in a behavioral health court, so
We're going to vacate that?
yes, Your Honor.
And go forward with the probation dispute.
Okay, that's fine. All right, any questions about any of the rights in this form I haven't specifically reviewed with you?
What's that?
Do you have any questions about any of the rights on this form that I haven't specifically reviewed with you?
No.
Okay. Other than the plea agreement, anyone make any threats or promises in order to get you to plead true here today?
No.
Are you doing so freely and voluntarily?
No.
No?
No. Well,
Are you pleading true freely and voluntarily?
oh, yes.
Okay, no one's forcing you to do this, right? No one's threatening you or anything like that? That's the purpose of that question. Just want to make sure you're doing this because you want to do it.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. All right, did you take any drugs or alcohol before coming to court that would affect your ability to understand these rights or the consequences of your plea?
No.
As we discussed, one of the orders that will be vacated is that you're no longer required to complete the behavioral health court program at this time. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make sure I note that before I sign off on this. All right, I've reviewed the probation violations. I'll find there's a sufficient factual basis to substantiate your plea that your waiver of rights here is knowing intelligently and voluntarily entered. You'll stand sworn to take your place to the probation violations. On both docket numbers, we'll take the one in February 1st, February 16th, on both docket numbers. How do you plead? Are those allegations true or not true?
True.
The probation violation allegations that, for the ones that were filed on April 2nd, 2018 on both dockets, how do you plead? Are those allegations true or not true?
True.
Okay, findings of true or entered on all 4 of those probation violations. Find that your plea of true is free of any coercion and is the result of a knowing, intelligent, voluntary decision on your part. Would you have a seat? I'll hear from the state if it wishes to be heard on sentence.
Your Honor, clearly the defendant's primary problem is drugs. So far, whatever's been tried just doesn't seem to work. I hope they find something that does work for him before he does real harm to himself. But this time, unlike other times when he's appeared, he didn't appear. So that's the reason for the 6 months, and hopefully, Chief Probation Officer Benjamin can find, get him a treatment that will help him deal with the substance abuse.
Attorney Frankel?
The
Your Honor, it's been a hard road for Tyler and for his family. His mother has been really a constant support.
He was living with his mother, if I recall correctly.
What was that?
He was living with his mother, right?
He was,
Lives not too far from probation, if I recall.
not too far from the courthouse either.
Yeah.
But
I remember his case, I do.
in the last few months, I don't think you would find him at his mother's house. And I think that's what we're seeing is he was in deeper than he has been in the past. That's why we have the sentence that we do now. And his hope is to get beyond this. He is very sincere about his own recovery and scared about his own position in life, and wants to move forward in the right way.
Okay, does Mr. Vernon have anything to say for himself?
I'm just ready to stay on the right path. I've lost a lot of friends past month, like 4 or 5. So,
What's your plan for when you get out? When you'll get out in a couple months? Where are you gonna live? What are you gonna do?
work,
Your place to live?
yeah,
With your mom?
yeah.
Okay.
I'll be working full-time, I believe.
Okay. I hope this one works out. That sentence is imposed. Good luck, Mr. Vernon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
State versus Sean McGuire.
Good afternoon. So what are we doing on Mr. McGuire's case? We have a probation violation, agreement, dispositional conference, agreement on a possession of cocaine, the prior, slightly different than the one I ran on a couple of weeks ago. So I'll enter a plea not guilty on his behalf on that.
Yes, sir.
What are we gonna do? Have a hearing?
State's ready to proceed with the hearing.
So, Your Honor, Mr. McGuire is wanting to set both matters for being in the near future. The state has made an offer on Monday. I was out of the office until today, and so I just had the opportunity to bring it to Mr. McGuire this afternoon. We discussed it. We came back with a counter offer, which he can accept, and so Mr. McGuire and I discussed and feel it's best at this time to give a little bit more time to discuss about the counter offer that hopefully that the state and Mr. McGuire can agree upon, but at this time, we're not ready to resolve this matter at this time. And where one of the bases of the VOP is this new possession charge. In particular, doesn't seem to resolve that today, where the possession charge is still pending.
He doesn't want to admit to it. That's what you're saying. What's the state's position?
Your Honor, the state counsel did this here, anticipated, the state's prepared to go forward. There's no requirement that the VOP be after the case is resolved.
Okay, well, counsel, are you prepared to go forward with the hearing?
Your Honor, not at this time. He does seek to, he would like to plead to this and things that make sense to do so globally, but, we're just not there with a resolution at this time.
Okay. Well, we're scheduled for the violation of probation hearing today, so I'll just take the forward.
Need to get to the equipment, Your Honor.
Yes, please.
police officer with the Keene Police Department.
Directing your attention to the 21st of June of this year at about 8 p.m. Were you on duty at that time?
Yes, I was on uniform patrol.
And around that time, did you receive any information about a vehicle to be on the lookout for?
Yeah, I received a message on my mobile data terminal, which is a computer in the cruiser. The message had information saying that Sean McGuire, who I knew from previous interactions, was familiar with his appearance and who he was. Sean McGuire was coming from Massachusetts with heroin, and he was in the vehicle with an Allen Ladd, and they gave the message I received had the make and model of the vehicle, which I believe was a 2013 red Ford Focus, and had the registration, which I believe was 3389791.
Okay. So, once you received this information, what did you do?
When I received the information, I was on another business. I think I was serving a subpoena somewhere else in Keene. So I moved down towards Baker Street. I knew that's where Mr. McGuire was living at the time, or I believed he was living there at the time. So I drove down Baker Street. I did not see the red Ford Focus in question at that address. So I continued down Baker Street towards Main Street. As I was approaching Main Street, I saw a red Ford Focus coming north on Main Street in the direction that would be consistent with coming from Massachusetts, either via 10 or 12. So he's coming up north on Main Street. The vehicle took a right onto Baker Street, where I was still stopped at the stop sign with Main Street. As the vehicle passed by, I saw a male driver who appeared to be about the same age as the age I had been given for Allen Ladd, who I wasn't familiar with him at the time. I did see Mr. McGuire sitting in the passenger seat, and I recognized him again from previous interactions. So,
I'm sorry, having seen that, what did you do?
So I began to execute a U-turn to try to turn around and at least follow them and figure out where they're going. As soon as I began to turn around, the vehicle made a quick left-hand turn onto Kelleher Street. It did signal while turning, but it didn't give a signal prior to turning, and the way it executed the turn, it was very sudden. It didn't do a lot of slowing down prior to the turn. So because of that, it seemed evasive to me, and also it was in violation of the 100 feet required by the RSA to indicate you're going to make a turn prior to the turn. So it made that sudden turn onto Kelleher Street. I turned around, caught up to the vehicle as it was on Kelleher Street. I activated my emergency lights. At that point, based on the information I've been given, which seemed to be corroborated by seeing Mr. McGuire in a red vehicle coming from direction consistent with the tip that we had received saying it was coming from Massachusetts. And then based on the sudden turn and the failure to give a signal prior to 100 feet, decided to execute a motor vehicle stop on that vehicle at that time.
Once the vehicle stopped, what did you do?
The vehicle stopped. It pulled pretty promptly to the right side of the road. I approached the vehicle on the driver's side. I radioed into dispatch, and I believe Officer Bomberg radioed back that he was on his way. Pushed the vehicle on the driver's side and asked the driver for his license registration. He handed me both, and I saw that his hands were shaking a lot. I asked him where they were coming from, and Mr. McGuire responded on the driver's behalf, saying that they were coming from the billiards in Swansea.
Okay, yeah, the person you're referring to is Mr. McGuire. Do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes, he's sitting right there.
Can the record reflect the correct identification of the defendant? So what happens next?
So I asked the driver for his license registration. He hands it to me. While I'm speaking with both of them, Officer Bomberg arrives and comes up on the passenger side. So while Mr. McGuire was speaking at one point, Officer Bomberg signals to me that he's found over the hood of the car. He's kind of like saying, "Hey, I got something over on my side." So at this point, I feel like there's a little bit more going on based on Mr. Ladd's nervousness and everything. So I asked him to step out of the vehicle, if he would be willing to step out of the vehicle, and he said that was no problem, so he steps out. While he's stepping out, I saw in the pocket of the driver's door a steel scrub pad that was ripped up, and in my training experience, that's consistent with crack cocaine use. As he stepped out of the vehicle, I was walking backwards away, so I didn't get any view into the driver compartment other than the pocket of the driver door. There was also a prescription bottle that was upturned, I think I later found out in the search warrant that that was prescribed medication to Mr. Ladd. But again, that was another observation at the time. So I walk backwards, he's walking towards me, and then I go around after Mr. Ladd's in the backside of the vehicle and away from the passenger compartment of the vehicle. I go around to Officer Blomberg and ask him what he sees, and he says, why don't you just go up and take a look and see. So, tell me what you see. So I walk up to the passenger side of the vehicle, start looking in, and I saw between Mr. McGuire and the door, there's a plastic baggie that was knotted at the top and cut at the bottom, or appeared to be cut at the bottom. Again, in my training experience, that's consistent with illicit drug packaging, usually with either crack cocaine or something to that effect. I continued to look around the passenger compartment through the window, and I saw a brown paper bag that was crumpled up at Mr. McGuire's feet. And
At that point, does the defendant say anything to you?
at the point, he asked me if he wants me to step, if I want him to step out of the vehicle. And I said, that's up to you. You don't have to, but you can if you want. And so he decides to step out of the vehicle and leaves the door open as he does that. So he steps out of the vehicle, and I believe I had him stand by with Officer Blomberg, and then Mr. Ladd was over with Officer Blomberg at the same time as well. And I was just continuing to observe from what I could from outside the vehicle, not going inside the vehicle. And while I was making observations, I was looking around the passenger seat, I noticed a blue leather handbag of some sort underneath the passenger seat.
Okay. Do you have any conversation with the defendant about that, what you saw on his side of the near the passenger seat?
Yes, I had a short conversation with Mr. Ladd, I believe, first, and then went to go speak to Mr. McGuire. Mr. McGuire told me that the brown paper bag at the floor of the vehicle and the blue handbag that was under the passenger seat both belonged to him. He said I could search him if I wanted to. At that point, I went back to Mr. Ladd to ask him if he would be willing to consent to a search of the vehicle, and he said that he would. So I explained that Mr. McGuire had told me that the brown paper bag and the blue handbag he had said were his. So Mr. Ladd consented to a search of the vehicle. We went through a KPD form that clearly lays out what the search is going to be for and their rights and everything. So he signed off on the entire sheet, reflecting his consent to search of the vehicle.
After that happens, what's your next step?
After that, I went back to, I started with the passenger seat with Mr. McGuire's items because he's a separate entity in the vehicle. So I decided to search his items first and then go to search the vehicle with Mr. Ladd's approval. So I picked up the two items that Mr. McGuire had said were his, the brown paper bag and the blue handbag that was under the passenger seat. I pulled those out of the vehicle, and again I asked Mr. McGuire if he would consent to a search of those items, and he said he did. I began searching the brown paper bag first, found nothing of interest, looked like it was all trash, hamburger wrappers and such. Then I went to the blue leather handbag, and as I was searching through it, the first thing I came across was a driver's license and I believe debit card, credit card, something to that effect, with Mr. McGuire's name on them, both the photo identification and the debit cards. The next item I came across was a cylindrical glass pipe. It was stuffed with copper scrub pad on one end and had white residue in it, burn marks. That's all in my training experience. It's all consistent with crack cocaine use. The next thing I found in another pouch was a small plastic baggie, clear plastic baggie filled with white chunky substance that in my training experience is consistent with crack cocaine.
And once you find that, what happens?
So once I found that, I decided to hold off on the consent search and just apply for a search warrant for the vehicle. Based on the information we've been given, I thought potentially there could be more drugs inside the vehicle. So I seized the vehicle pursuant to a search warrant and placed Mr. McGuire under arrest for the possession of controlled drugs.
Did he say anything at the time that you placed him under arrest? Or shortly thereafter?
Would I be able to review my report? I know we went back to the interview room, but I'm not sure if there's anything particular before that.
said at that point?
Yes, I told Mr. McGuire that he was under arrest for the crack, and he made a comment to the effect that that he never would have consented to a search of the bag, having known that there was crack cocaine in that bag.
Now, you take him back to the station, correct?
Yes.
At the station, does he agree to speak to you?
Yes, I brought him into the booking interview room, told him it was audio and video recorded, went through the Miranda rights form with him. He signed the form waiving his rights and agreeing to speak with me at that time. Basically asked for an idea of what had happened regarding the incident that night, and he told me that he and Mr. Ladd and another individual named Josh Nielsen had gone down to Lawrence, Massachusetts, and he had arranged a purchase of heroin and crack cocaine in Lawrence, Massachusetts. They had gotten, I believe our report says that and I believe from recollection that it was a finger of heroin and an 8-ball of crack cocaine. I believe he said that the finger of heroin was untouched and the 8-ball was touched. I asked him what that meant, and he said that meant the product had been sampled. He did admit that they had used some of the crack cocaine prior to their return back, or during their return back to Keene, New Hampshire, prior to my interaction with them.
Okay. Now, this was all audio and video recorded, correct?
Yes, it is.
If you want to have the recording, if the court wants to hear the whole recording, I can.
Are they to you, Counselor?